Well, the Israeli flags were flown at half-staff today to mark October 7th, Remembrance Day, observed on the Hebrew anniversary of the attack. The future of the negotiated peace deal may hinge on the return of the 19 deceased hostages Hamas has yet to turn over to Israel authorities, and whether or not Hamas will disarm. Joining me now is Washington Stand reporter Casey Harper, who's been following today's top stories. Casey, what's the latest out of Israel?
Yeah, thanks, Tony. State ceremonies, as you said, were held across the country to mark this grim two-year anniversary. And speaking at an event in Jerusalem, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vowed that Israel will complete its war aims and warned that its enemies will pay a heavy price.
כל מי שמניף עלינו את ידו כבר יודע.
In that clip, Netanyahu says, whoever raises their hand on us already knows that they will pay a very heavy price for their aggression. We are determined to complete the victory that will affect our lives for many years. Well, this two-year conflict, Tony, has cost nearly 1,000 Israeli soldiers and left more than 6,000 wounded. Meanwhile, President Trump posted on Truth Social a stern warning to Hamas, saying that they must stop the killings or, quote, we will have no choice but to go in and kill them. Reports are also emerging that Hamas has been executing suspected collaborators inside of Gaza, Tony.
Yeah, Casey, it's interesting. We see the price that Israelis have paid, but Hamas has also caused tens of thousands of deaths of Palestinians there in Gaza, and they're continuing by executing them themselves. Well, President Trump is now focusing his efforts to end the war in Ukraine. What's the latest on that front?
Yeah, big developments today, Tony. President Trump announced a surprise agreement with Russian President Vladimir Putin to hold another summit like the one in Alaska, but this time in Budapest, all aimed at ending the war in Ukraine.
I thought it was a very good phone call. I thought very productive. But I'll be meeting with President Putin, and we'll make a determination. Tomorrow I'm meeting with President Zelensky, and I'll be telling him about the call. I mean, we have a problem. They don't get along too well, those two.
You could say that. But this announcement comes just before Trump's scheduled meeting with Ukrainian President Zelensky tomorrow. And Zelensky is still pushing for more military aid, including those controversial long-range Tomahawk missiles. But the phone call between Trump and Putin today was described as productive, but the future of increased U.S. support to Ukraine remains uncertain. Now, meanwhile, the conflict is intensifying in Ukraine, with Russia launching hundreds of drones and missiles targeting, in particular, Ukraine's energy infrastructure, while Ukraine strikes back at Russian facilities, Tony.
Very interesting. We'll have to see what happens on that front. Obviously, President Trump is somewhat on a roll, so maybe he can bring peace to that region as well. You know, Casey, today, 16th day of the government shutdown. What's the latest? Any crack in the door that we might see government open back up?
Yeah, Tony, if there is a crack, it's too small for me to see. Senate Democrats, they blocked that Republican-backed defense funding bill you mentioned that was meant to pay the troops as we're here in day 16 of the government shutdown. Now, that bill in particular, it needed a procedural vote to allow the addition of other funding measures, but Democrats refused to participate in that without guarantees on what else would be included.
And we're not going to pay $1.5 trillion ransom to get Democrats to reopen government operations. That's right, Mr. President, $1.5 trillion. That's what Democrats are demanding.
That was Senate Majority Leader John Thune, who's wanting to attach, bills for transportation, health, and housing. But Democrats, of course, led by Chuck Schumer, are demanding clear agreements beforehand, citing deep mistrust between the parties. So with no deal in sight, lawmakers remain deadlocked, prolonging the shutdown and uncertainty over government funding. And of course, Tony, one of the most protracted sticking points continues to be the extension of those Obamacare subsidies.
Well, let's talk about that for just a moment, Casey, because that was the $1.5 trillion that Senator Thune was making reference to.
Right.
These Obamacare subsidies were supposed to be short-term. They were a part of the Inflation Reduction Act, or that passed under the Biden administration, that were in the COVID era, and it was designed to be simply temporary. They're supposed to expire at the end of this year, but now they're wanting to extend them. What's behind this when it comes to the Democrats pushing for this?
Yeah, so I think, it's the Democrats are looking for a place to take a stand, and they think they found it. And it comes at an interesting time as Senator Josh Hawley has introduced a new bill to stop taxpayer-backed health plans from covering those very things, abortions and gender transition procedures for kids in Obamacare, though many will deny that's even happening. It is, of course. And Hawley's legislation, it would close those loopholes and that still allow coverage in some states with a few exceptions. And Hawley has a message that a lot on the right are echoing, which is it's time to protect kids and uphold Christian values in healthcare.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to watch because there's issues on two layers here. Number one, as we talked about, the extension of these COVID-era subsidies, which really I think are designed to prop up a failed system, Obamacare, the ACA, but also, as you pointed out, which Senator Hawley is zeroing in on, is the underlying issue of the funding for abortion and gender care, gender transitions that is in the Obamacare legislation. Casey, this is obviously a very important issue for the Family Research Council, and we're working to convince Congress to eliminate these subsidies and these underlying programs that fund abortion. Thanks so much, Casey. I'm sure we're going to talk to you a bit later in the program, but thanks so much for bringing us up to date on the headlines for today.